I wanted to talk about Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats. Because, folks, an interesting thing is happening. I believe there's some kind of schism happening in the Dems. And I don't think it's fully surfaced yet. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves, okay? Let's take a look at what Hakeem Jeffries said the other day on Stephen A. Smith's show.
Well, listen, the extreme left protests me more than they protest Donald Trump. Because literally, wherever I go. So I think in part because I've declined, I've refused, I've chosen not to bend the knee to either people on the far left and certainly not to Donald Trump and the far right. We all have a responsibility to serve the people we were elected to represent and the country and the Constitution. And I certainly have not been bashful and will not be bashful in disagreeing with people who are trying to take this country in a direction that doesn't lift everybody up, whether that comes from the right or whether that comes from the far left.
Yes, two very equivalent groups of people for sure. On the one hand, you have the far left who wants everyone to have health care. And on the right, you have a fascist coup that wants to turn America into a Christian nationalist fascistic empire run by a dictator. Yes, truly these are two very equivalent things. Hakeem Jeffries needs to go. He needs to resign. He does not deserve the position of power or leadership he currently occupies. And this is only going to become more of a problem because you can't do the enlightened centrist thing when your two opposing sides are, the far left, leftists, progressives, and liberals all furiously angry. And on the other hand, a fascist empire. You don't get to. I'm sorry, the enlightened centrism doesn't actually work rhetorically in that field. And it's just really interesting. This piece in Semaphore really dives into a lot of it. Came out, Katia Goba and David Weigel. Jeffries takes heat as Democrats' base seeks anti-Trump fight, which is the thing, right? Like that's the kind of the crux of it. It's not the far left that wants him to fight. It's the entire goddamn Democratic base. The people who are actually being affected by these decisions in government, because it's not a game. It's not a
I have
game,
extreme despisement for that political cuck Hakeem Jeffries.
right? People hate this. People hate Hakeem Jeffries.
I just copied your organized command and put it into a signal bot I wrote for a lefty group I'm in. Tie for the idea and the links.
You're very welcome, Von Tux. And if you are not limited by the link by character limit for that, I'll just post the full organize because it included one more. Oh, it's over. Okay. Oh, YouTube chat has a limit. Okay. I will include the last call to action, which is a call to join DSA. If you want to include that in your Signal bot, there you go. Join DSA. There you go. But the base of the Democratic Party wants this fight. They want to see Democratic leadership fight for them. They want to see Democratic leadership win for them. They want Democratic leadership to actually try and, staunch the wounds that are being inflicted upon the body politic. They want action. And sitting back and saying, we're just going to let gonna let this guy beat the hell out of you, and whatever of you is left will come crawling to us years hence, is not a winning strat. And it's just, it's insane. Asked if Jeffries is feeling heat from the left, former Congressional Progressive Caucus Chair Pramila Jayapal responded that, "Oh, I think so." It's wild, dog. But the party is far less popular than it was 8 years ago, even with its own base. Polling this month from Quinnipiac University found just 40% of self-identified Democrats approve of the job their party was doing in Congress, alongside 19% of independents. 40% of independents and 79% of Republicans approved of how the GOP was doing. Um, just insane tanking of the numbers by current Democratic leadership, right? And one of the things I found really fascinating today is that, um, or rather, yesterday, is this piece by Robert Evans. Okay. I was recently leaked a document that was written by and for think tank and DNC affiliated policy wonks and circulated in private chats. It describes in unsparing terms the threat Curtis Yarvin, neo-reactionary tech founders, and Elon Musk pose to democracy. And the thing that I find interesting about this is that this is currently being shared in the back channels. This is what the scuttlebutt is. When you're hearing about what policy wonks and think tank bros are talking about, they're talking about it because their Democratic folks have approached them and said, "What do you think about this?" Because it's really on our minds and our constituents are really worried about it. Come up with a way to make this like a thing we can speak on with authority. And that's what's happening here. Someone approached these people to figure out what democratic messaging should be related to this fascist coup. That's good. Because it also is not something that someone could do with a relatively small amount of power. You would have to have pretty decent sway with these kinds of folks. So what I find interesting about this is that it indicates a level of differentiation among the main Democratic Party of elected officials and perhaps folks like Hakeem Jeffries, who will never change. DNC members inside the party machine. No, like DNC policy wonks, like the people that DNC folks rely on to crunch the numbers and like see what policies are popular and such. And taking a look at this, it's interesting. Since February 5th, 2025, a document warning about Curtis Yarvin and the Silicon Valley-led coup attempt has been circling among think tank experts and DNC employees. The document is titled "The Imminent Neo-Reactionary Threat to the American Republic." It opens with the statement that the brief was iteratively and collectively compiled by a broad, bipartisan, and decentralized network of experts who wish to remain anonymous due to concerns about being targeted. The full document is here. You can see the table of contents below. Very interesting stuff. The title of the actual file when I received it was Evidence Brief for Journalists, and the introduction describes its aim as explaining the nature of the current political crisis to journalists who are attempting to inform the public. This would lead one to think the document was largely written for the benefit of the press. However, I spoke with two sources who are members of these groups and received the document. They told me, to their knowledge, the document mostly is spreading among people you might broadly refer to as policy wonks. One source I interviewed explained, it is a thing for think tanks to frame overviews for lay people as briefs for journalists or Congress. See the IPCC reports. Part of me thinks the framing for journalists is just a shortcut for this is somewhat specialized knowledge broken down. The paper opens by acknowledging the scope of the executive power grab being perpetrated under President Musk and the destabilization wrought by Elon Musk and his Doge team. It then notes the threat is an order of magnitude beyond just a presidential power grab. Musk, it argues, is tied to a broader group of Silicon Valley tech elites, including Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, who seek to end democracy. Curtis Yarvin is labeled as a thought leader in this group called the Neoreactionaries. I will stop here to note that this summary is accurate enough for mass consumption, but I have some issues with it. Musk probably would not label himself a neo-reactionary and does not have much of a history with Yarvin. Peter Thiel does, but it's more of a relationship of patronage than mutual influence. It would be more accurate to say that Thiel and Andreessen find Yarvin useful because of his success in spreading to a lot of young techie kids the idea that CEOs should run the world. Musk, I feel, has largely jumped on his own on this bandwagon because those kids are useful foot soldiers. Yarvin's ideas about retiring all government employees and destroying the independent media and academia are convenient for his own ambitions. This context may be unnecessary for explaining the danger to regular people, but I think it is a mistake to credit Yarvin with more power than he holds. And that's absolutely true. And I think it's also perhaps accurate to label Elon Musk as a neo-reactionary with the understanding that Elon Musk would never call himself that because that's way too many syllables for him. You know? That being said, it's quite possible that that's exactly the category he fits into. Okay? That all said, the document sums up the threat quite well. The neo-reactionaries have openly stated their aims to destroy the nation state and the constitutional order and replace them with a newly privately owned corporate state to be run by a CEO dictator. Citizens become subjects owned by the state slaves, because everything rots when it has no owner, human beings included. And that's basically a direct quote from like this from this ideological line. You know, the idea of this is that it's a neo-reactionary because it's a reactionary movement predicated on kind of these new age technologist rooted or technology rooted ideas, kind of an oligarchy, technocracy, and feudalism all combined into one thing. Again, there are a lot of different terms you could use here. Cloud feudalism, Balaji Srinivasan calls it the network state. There are a lot of different ways you can frame it, but it mostly boils down to the same thing, kind of a techno-feudalism. Okay? The quoted lines are, of course, Yarvin's. From here, the document argues that Musk and his team are attempting to bring about this dystopia by taking over the nervous system of the state. This would be the data and communication systems Doge is trying to centralize in its unaccountable hands. Next, the authors of this document make a call to action. Quote, the most dramatic reversals of democratic breakdown, 1977 India, 2022 Brazil, 2023 Poland, have been accomplished by radically large tent cross-ideological coalitions with little in common except a desire for the continuation of a constitutional order. Evidence suggests the present threat to American democracy is dire enough that such a broad tent approach focused on Musk and his associates may be required. This is the most interesting and hopeful part of the whole document for me. For one thing, I think it accurately states what is needed in the present moment, a popular front against autocracy and dictatorship. I would add to their list of relevant examples France from 1934 to 1938. It is heartening to see evidence that this understanding has started to grow within the DNC policy set. And that's kind of where I'm at here, chat. That's kind of where I'm at here. Because part of my fear is that this entire section of the Democratic DNC establishment was just too out of touch to hear that message, was just too out of touch to actually understand the existential nature of the threat arrayed against us. And if that's the case, it's kind of like we the people are on our own to pull ourselves out of this. And any hint or sign that we could get institutional support for our broad popular front against this fascist coup, that's good. That's good. Superjet guy, please, 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 please understand. We're not talking about DNC members. We're talking about the people, the DNC folks, whether they are elected officials in the Democratic Party or they are internal voting members of the DNC, or they're like the Ken Martins of the world. They rely on a certain groups of, let's call them thinky boys. And these thinky boys come up with good ideas that may be popular for politicians in elected office. Now, the fact that these ideas are being, this particular idea about the existential threat arrayed against us is being passed around in those thinky boy circles is good, because those thinky boys influence what the electeds do, and they also influence what DNC members do. They have a lot of influence around them while wielding very little actual power themselves. And so the fact that this is getting traction in those circles indicates that there is a shift in the winds, because they would not be picking this up if some of their elected officials or some, maybe Ken Martin, maybe others internal to the DNC would they don't look at these things unless someone is approaching them and saying, "Hey, is this real, or should we be worried about this?" It's an indicator of where a lot of elected officials may currently be. And that indicator is positive for us when we're talking about averting fascism and building this coalition. Okay? The source who sent me this document in the first place described themselves as a member of, quote, a few unofficial networks of climate activists who are high ranking in the government and policy/think tank circles, unquote. They noted that these are normally very milquetoast lib spaces, but they're being radicalized rapidly. And that's the key here. Because usually those thinky boys are not radicals. Those thinky boys are in the bag for capitalism. Those thinky boys are in the bag for establishment democratic policies, just by and large. But what this indicates is that this document and that these threats are enough to scare the shit out of these thinky boys. And so the thinky boys, in response to having the shit scared out of them, as well as like having these democratic lawmakers and members of the DNC approach them, are sharing around this document to describe for, members of Congress, for other elected officials, for members of the DNC, the nature of the threat. That's what this is for. Okay? That's what's happening. So, it's good. It's good. It's a positive sign. How do we get it in front of more Congress critters? You could share it. I'll link it here. The full document. You could share it in an email with your elected representatives. Of course. Let me pull this up. I'll share the link in chat for you guys. Boop, boop, boop. But yeah, it's an interesting document for sure. About 27 pages. Going over just in a way to make it very clear what the threat is, what's at stake, why this is happening, exactly why this movement is so existentially damaging, etc. It's good stuff. A link to the article. Here you go. Here's a link to the Shatter Zone Substack. Boop, boop, boop. In what format do I send the doc? You can just send it as a link. The same link I sent here, you can also send. And so, yeah, it's a very positive sign that the milquetoast libs are starting to wake up. And it might take them a bit longer to continue waking up, but folks like Hakeem Jeffries are rapidly becoming the outlier. They're rapidly being pushed off to the side because they are clearly doing nothing. I want the title Thinky Boy. Yes, it's also downloadable as a PDF as well from the link I posted. But yeah, it goes over a lot of Curtis Yarvin's concept of a butterfly revolution, largely what a lot of the current ongoing fascist coup attempt is attempting, you know? Yeah. It's not great. It's not great. But it is good that people are waking up. I will get this out to my local Dems. Fuck yeah, Dragonfly. Let's circulate this in as many places as possible within our DSAs, within our local Democratic parties, within our whatever reach we got. Circulate that document because it will explain a lot of what's going on. My brother works for a judge in Delaware. Shall I send this to him? Sure. Why not? Wouldn't hurt. There's nothing secret about the document. It's already been leaked. Share it with whoever you think it might be useful for. Let's just I just want to leave you guys with the last portion of this here. Again, I do not believe Elon Musk is particularly well read on Curtis Yarvin's work, but Yarvin's dream of a CEO king ruling next to a puppet president gels with what some of Elon's confidants have described as his ambition, and I will add, gels perfectly with what we've seen today in the cabinet meeting, where he stood up and lorded over the entire cabinet and Donald Trump, the president. It's observable at this point. A recent Vanity Fair article quoted a close associate of Musk's from Silicon Valley. He told them, Elon believes he should be emperor of the world, and this is his way of showing people what he's capable of as emperor. He truly believes his way of handling the world is the best possible outcome for everyone in it. The last few weeks provide more than enough proof that the authors of this document accurately understand the danger we are in. Unfortunately, aside from the suggestion of a popular front against dictatorship, the document is short on solutions. There is one line that promises Section 3 articulates what Congress and other actors can do to stop Musk. However, the document in its present form does not include a Section 3 or any comprehensive suggestions. If the situation weren't so dire, I might find that funny. But that's kind of why we're in the cool zone, guys. The cool zone doesn't have any nice, neat answers. If it did, it wouldn't be the cool zone. What we got is the very obvious and correct conclusion, and that is we need to build up as much popular support as humanly possible to oppose this with every fiber and every particulate of fight we have. It needs to be apparent in the streets that it is not acceptable for this to happen, that it will not be allowed to happen, that regardless of what powers the president may claim or what powers Elon Musk might claim, we the people stand with the Constitution of the United States and we will fight to keep it. And I think that is the point of building that broad popular front. And that is why we need politicians. We need these people in positions of power in order to more effectively fight, to gum up the works, to buy more time for us to organize and reach a critical mass of support that they dare not oppose. That's the name of the game at this point, as far as I can tell. I would really, really, really love if that were not the case, but we have thus far avoided all of the off-ramps from this particular conclusion. So that's where we're at.